are in the middle of the week. We are nearing the end of the month, and we are already counting down even deeper and deeper into our Bengals top 25 players for 2023. We're out of the 20s. We're into the teens at number 19. And this is a guy who we have talked about so much, who you can't talk enough about because there's a lot to talk about with this guy, and that is soon to be, emphasis on soon to be, right tackle Jonah Williams, who was at number 19 on our list, right behind, or right ahead of Nick Scott, who was at number 20, who we talked about on Tuesday. So yeah, Jonah Williams is in a very interesting place in his career, but of course he's still good enough to make the list. Was he high enough? Was he too low? You know, we're going to have all those questions answered right here on this special edition of the Strictly Stripes podcast. Welcome into another Hump Day edition of the podcast. Muhammad Ahmad, yours truly, with you alongside Andrew Gillis and Mike Nizalik. Well, it's Nizlik, but I don't know. I just thought it sounded cool. Nizalik. Does anyone ever say that, Mike? Do people just say Nizlik? Have you heard Nizalik? Do you ever get a mixture of the two?
Niz is the other one, but no,
Niz?
most of it,
Nizlik?
no, just not Niz.
Oh,
Niz.
they're just Niz. Okay.
Yeah.
Mike Niz. I like that. It's got a nice ring to it. Mike Niz. Okay. Yeah, okay, no, that was just cool. It rolled off my tongue like that. But yeah, we got Mike Niz on the pod here with us, and we have read some really cool fan responses on why people are Bengals fans and why they are diehard Bengals fans. So tell us why you're a Bengals fan. Like, don't be shy, don't be afraid. I mean, be as bold as you want to be. Keep it PC because obviously we have a broad audience, but yeah, make it fun, make it interesting. Go to strictlystripes.com and click on the link that says why I'm a Bengals fan. Tell us your story of why you're a Bengals fan. And if it's easier instead, you can email us your story at stripes@cleveland.com. We've gotten a mixture of both Google Doc responses, Google form responses, and emails. We've already gone through 4. We're probably going to get through some more later this week. And we're definitely going to keep going through the rest of them going into training camp. Take a little break from those responses today to talk a lot about Jonah Williams because, again, there is just so much on this guy going into his 5th and probably, honestly, likely his final year with the Bengals, competing at right tackle, pretty much alongside Jackson Carman. And again, I say competing with a 65, 60, 70% chance that he's going to win the job. But let me ask you guys this. Let's assume they don't sign Orlando Brown, and Jonah Williams is still your left tackle going into 2023. How much would that have changed your all's ranking for him on this list? So I want to ask you guys this, though, because this is where I feel like I want to start with this discussion with Jonah Williams. Let's assume a world where Orlando Brown doesn't get signed and Jonah Williams is your starting left tackle for next year. How much or how little does that affect where you have him on the list?
Oh, not at all, frankly. I actually think that, the position, I mean, maybe it hurts him, just a little bit, or it would help him to stay at left tackle because, you are kind of making a move over to the right side. But like, I think, there is this general misconception amongst fans, amongst, people that watch the NFL in any capacity that kind of just assume, oh, well, if you're an okay tackle, you're going to be a really good guard, or, if you're good on the left side, you're going to be really good on the right side or something like that. I just think that people kind of think that there are different, different levels to the offensive line just because you look at left tackle and you say, oh, the blind side, that's the best tackle. Well, it's not really the case anymore. There are so many different left tackles in the league that, are not as good as their counterparts on the right side. I mean, like when they play the Steelers this year, Jonah Williams is going to have to block TJ Watt. Like the play where TJ Watt in Pittsburgh, like kind of climbed the ladder and jumped up over La'el Collins, like that's a play that Jonah Williams is going to have to defend against, which is obviously impossible, but you're going to have to do that. So yeah, I wouldn't really have him, kind of any different. I don't think, I think it's a transition that's going to be difficult, but he's kind of known it was coming since March. It's not something where, it happened in August and they're like, hey, actually Jackson Carman's is the better left tackle, so let's try and move Jonah to the right side. Like this is something that you can train for, that he has been training for. It's not a totally foreign position to him. He played it a little bit at Alabama before moving to the left side. So yeah, I think that I think you could make a slight case that it would, you could rank him a little bit higher if he was still going to be the left tackle, just because it's a familiar position. But again, right tackle is still a really, really difficult position to play in the league. And for a team that passes this much, and for, in a division with this many good pass rushers, you're going to have to play really well. And I just think that, I think he's ready for a bounce back year, considering everything he went through in 2022. So I think he'll be fine. But again, it's not going to be an easy challenge for sure.
I think it would have been a couple spots, because I think it would, for me, not necessarily, a huge jump, but he wouldn't be competing for a spot. He'd have a starting spot sort of locked up. I do think you have to take into account, I mean, in theory, he could lose out. I think that's unlikely, but I mean, it's possible. So I think it lowers him a little bit, but not terribly, not too much. But he does have to sort of earn his way here. But I still think he would be ranked behind those other 4 offensive linemen that we haven't mentioned yet. The starting or 3 in the case they didn't sign Orlando Brown, the returning starters. So like I said, it would maybe a few spots, but nothing that would sort of shake up the list.
So looking at what you guys had versus what I had Jonah Williams at 21, so not too far off, like 2 spots below where we ended up having him. And I know, Andrew, you had him a little higher at 17, and Mike had him a little bit higher as well at 18. So yeah, I mean, again, just based on the aggregation we made from all of our answers, 19 is where he ended up ultimately landing. So I'm just kind of looking at your list here, Andrew. I'm just curious, why did you think he was worthy of being 2 spots higher on your list, on at number 17?
Well, I think, when you kind of look at when you look at this list, one of there were a couple different things I tried to take into account here. I mean, I had him above. When I did my rankings, I actually had him above Cordell Volson. I'm trying to look here and see. Mike did not do that. And Muhammad, wow, you had him high.
Yeah, I had him
You
all
did,
the way at 12.
yeah, so you didn't do that either. So I think I thought Cordell played really well, especially towards the end of the year. But again, I have him. I feel good about Jonah going into 2023 because there's a couple different things I think working in his factor. One, frankly, he's pissed off. He's
And
dealing
he
with
should be. He should be a
yeah,
little bit.
sure. And I don't think, yeah, I'm not saying that's unfair of him to feel that way. I mean, you're dealing with a situation where the team signed over you. They replaced you in free agency.
And didn't even
And
tell you about it.
well, yeah, and he feels, he feels upset about the way that the front office kind of handled that, and he wasn't, inflammatory. He wasn't explosive. He just kind of stated his case and said, look, here's why I'm upset. Here's what I thought should have happened, and it didn't happen. And that's why I'm upset. So he's really upset. And not really upset, but he's motivated. He's got a chip on his shoulder going into 2023. He's entering a contract year, which is really big because I think if Jonah doesn't play well at right tackle, that really, really hurts him going into the offseason, because then you've got a position where, okay, well, the only position that you've seen him have success at in the past is at left tackle. And in 2022, he was hurt. There were some periods of rough play by the entire offensive line. Like if you play well at right tackle in 2023, I think you just absolutely I mean, there's really not a number you can place on it to say that this guy is now way more marketable and way more desirable as a free agent, because you can play left and right tackle, and it just opens up a whole new world of possibilities for you. And the third thing is he's healthy. He dislocated his kneecap against the Ravens. He didn't miss that many plays. I think it was like a handful of plays, single digit plays.
Yeah.
And then he comes back, and I do think that bothered him maybe more than was known. I am curious to see, if he says anything about that, like how much that bothered him in the immediate aftermath of that Ravens game. And oh God, what was that? Week 5, week 6, whatever that
Yeah,
was.
week
I
5.
think that did bother him. So I think that there's just a number of things going in his favor right now. I think he's going to be given every chance to win that right tackle job. And if he does that, I mean, I have a really good feeling about Jonah playing well in 2023. Now, I don't think that that'll mean Jonah's necessarily, stamping his ticket back to the Bengals in 2024. I
Oh
actually
no.
can make the argument that if he plays really well, he almost certainly will not be a Bengal in 2024. I think if he plays, okay, I think that there's a better chance he'll be back, than if he plays really well. But yeah, I do think Jonah is going to have a nice little bounce back year, and I am fairly high on him going into 2023.
Wait, so you think if he doesn't play well, he actually could be back in Cincinnati?
Well, so not play well is different than fine. Like I think if you get plus level play from Jonah Williams, he's gone because he's gonna get like I just don't know if the Bengals are gonna be able to give genuine starting tackle money to another guy in the offseason. I mean, you've spent on Alex Kappa, you've spent on Ted Karras, you've spent on Orlando Brown. Now are you going to spend on Jonah Williams with Burrow, with Higgins, with Chase, with all these guys kind of coming up on big deals? I just don't know if you can fiscally do that. But if he's fine, I think that, you can feel okay about maybe re-upping for a year or two, going into 24 and 25 at a not insane cap number. Obviously, it takes two to tango there. Maybe he feels more comfortable taking a similar dollar figure from another team. This is all hypothetical, but, I think that if he's fine, the Bengals can live with fine on the offensive line right now, especially at right tackle, considering what they added at left tackle. But if Jonah's good, I think that that's going to be the end of the line for him in Cincinnati. And I think if he's bad, that's going to be the end of the line for him in Cincinnati. I think if you get kind of middle of the pack play from him, then you're actually kind of opening up a door where he can return.
I'll make it even simpler. I think he's gone. Like, even middle of the pack, he's done. I don't think he's coming back. Like, no matter how good or how bad or how middle of the road he is, I think he's out. I mean, you think he's gonna come back after like what happened with the front office? I think he's done. Now, obviously, he didn't show that anger. I mean, he handled it, with grace when he talked about it to the media when he came back for phase 3 workouts. But I mean, deep down, I think he's probably saying to himself, I'm taking my money, playing, and leaving. Because here's the thing. If he plays middle of the pack, he can go somewhere else and probably make the same money the Bengals would give him, don't you think?
Yeah, well, sure. But I mean, at some point, one, time heals all wounds, and two, what
Not
happens?
always, not always.
What happens if the Bengals do the same thing that they did last year? Like what happens if the Bengals lose in the AFC title game or in the AFC divisional round, and there is kind of a feeling of unfinished business, and T. Higgins gets an extension, and Joe Burrow gets his extension, and all of a sudden
And
you're
Jamar
looking
Chase
around the
gets one
room.
next year.
Yeah, like you're kind of looking. Well, just for now, well, let's say that Higgins and Burrow, just in this hypothetical made up world, let's say that they get their extensions, and all of a sudden Jonah's looking around the room, going, "Okay, the only guy leaving on the offense is Tyler Boyd, and maybe Joe Mixon's gone too, but the entire offensive line is going to be back. Joe Burrow's in the fold, and now the Bengals say that they're interested in giving me a deal for X." Maybe he runs that back. I mean, you're right. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he says, "I'm done. I had my run here. Let's go to a new opportunity. Let's go to a new challenge." But yeah, I think that if I just think I think it's premature to kind of cast it off and say, "Oh, he's absolutely gone." On whether he plays great, kind of average or terrible, he's absolutely not going to play for the Bengals in 2024. I think that there is absolutely a possibility of that.
I mean, Mike, how premature of a thought is that? Like, what do you think of what, me and Andrew are assessing with Jonah Williams' future? Are we thinking too far ahead?
Well, I mean, I think there has to be an apology from the Bengals front office. We haven't seen any sort of indication that they feel like they mistreated him at all. So I think that would be the biggest stumbling block aside from his play, that would, smooth things over to have him back. And if it came after he played well, I mean, that'd be kind of phony. So
Oh,
unless,
100%.
unless they come back in training camp and he said they had a conversation, if they start the season and the Bengals front office hasn't talked to him, I could not see a scenario where he's back.
Yeah, I don't either. Like, because at that point, it's like, okay, you still didn't get an apology. You still got snubbed, no matter what happens at right tackle. Um, and at that point, it's like, yeah, why would you want to come back? It's like when you know someone doesn't care about you, and in your head at least, you feel like
Well,
someone doesn't care
so
about you.
okay,
Why?
okay, Mohammed, I gotta cut you off there. Like, are we sure about that? Like, doesn't care about you? I don't know. Like that
Okay,
feels
that was a stretch. I don't mean like
yeah.
that,
Like
but
I don't even know if it needs to be like a full on apology. I just think it can be, look, we should have explained to you what, like almost like a clarification. I think you can just say we should have explained to you what happened, and we didn't. Here's why we did it. Boom, 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 boom. Like
fair
I don't
enough.
know
Okay.
if, because that's the only conversation that would have needed. Like if the Bengals called Jonah Williams 30 minutes before the Orlando Brown signing was going to be made public, like they're not going to say, dude, man, we're so sorry. Like, no, they're going to say, here's why we're doing this. Here's what's going to happen. And we're going
Well,
to move you over to
no,
right
the,
tackle.
the the sorry is for not talking to him and not engaging with him at all. Not for making the move. The
Right.
Sure, but
apology is how they handled
right.
it,
Oh, of course. I
not
just
for
think that, go ahead.
not for what they did. Because like I mean, he even said like he wouldn't have been happy about the move, but like I mean, ultimately that's football, right? But like the way they handled it in the months that followed was what the apology would be for, and just not be willing to talk to one of your players. Like I think that I think that the front office should have an open door policy when a player wants to talk. I don't see any reason why they should be so reluctant to explain themselves or discuss things. Like it makes no sense to me.
Well, because to me, I mean, like, if you can't have that open door policy, then to me, it's like, what are you hiding? Like, if you can't be transparent, then there's a lot of red flags there. And I mean, that's a whole nother conversation. But no, I'm with the Mike on that. Yeah, because as far as the move goes, that's business. Like, even Jonas said himself, like, if they told me, oh, we're moving you and we're getting Orlando, like, he said, yeah, it would have sucked, but at least he knew in the moment that, like, they were honest and transparent. They weren't even transparent. Like, transparency is a big part of any business, any industry. I mean, even in the NFL, like, I don't know if you can't even talk to the general manager, whether it's in this case Duke Tobin, Katie Blackburn, whoever that person or persons is, that's a problem. And again, we'll see what happens going into training camp. Maybe when Joe Burrow gets extended, we hear from Duke Tobin, and maybe he gets asked about that. And of course, again, there's two sides to every story, so maybe he has a side that we haven't heard that's leading me and Mike to be a little bit harsh on them right now. But again, we'll see what happens with that. We're going to take a quick timeout, talk more about Jonah Williams on the field, his ranking, why we ranked him where we ranked him, along with other things we haven't mentioned, plus much more to talk about right here on the Strictly Stripes podcast. All right, thanks for staying with us on the Strictly Stripes podcast. So we are talking about Jonah Williams, who is at number 19 on our list. And again, I know Andrew and Mike, I asked you guys about your rankings. I'm looking, you had him at 17, Andrew. Mike, you had him not far behind at 18. And I had him at 21. So to be honest, the reason why I had him there, and it goes back to what I asked you guys about, him moving to right tackle. Like, how much does that change your perception and or the ranking? I mean, for me, it said a lot because here's the thing. We all agree he's going to win that job. Like, Lyle Collins is not starting week one. And even if Lyle Collins was healthy, I think Jonah Williams is beating him out. Like, I just think he's the better experienced tackle. But let's assume, like, think about this, 4 or 5 weeks into the season, Jonah Williams looks awful. Like, this is again worst case, but it's still a possible scenario. Just looks awful out there. Does not look like his old self when he was blocking well that Super Bowl season. Just doesn't look anything like that. And let's say, you're Zach Taylor and you decide to put Jackson Carman in at right tackle, or maybe, I don't even know, like, unless Cody Ford is playing at guard, you plug and play with, Jackson Carman at right tackle, and then you have Cody Ford as the swing man if it's not Hakeem Adeniji, assuming Lyle Collins is still hurt, obviously. Otherwise, it's Collins. Point is, if he plays bad, like there's a good chance he could get benched. Like I really think there is a possible chance he gets benched for Jackson Carman because Carman I don't think is going to win the job. But if Carman looks really good in camp and makes a really good case for being the swing tackle slash backup right tackle, and Williams is not good, I still think Jonah's vulnerable. Which is why I think I had him more at 21 because I'm not even sold that he's going to be not even necessarily a surefire starter. He's a surefire week one starter. We don't know if he's a full-time starter. Like, do you guys think going into week one, even though he's the starter, like how vulnerable do you think he is to losing the job to Jackson Carman?
I think, it depends on what camp looks like. I think that, when you kind of go through, the nuances of going from the left to the right, like I said, it's not an easy transition. I mean, you're basically inverting everything. So, I think it just kind of depends on what camp looks like. But, I mean, we have to project here a little bit. If Jonah can make the transition smoothly, I think he's going to be the starter, and that's not going to be a position you want to pull the plug on after a week or two. Like, you're going to want to give him some runway. So I don't think he's in danger of losing that job early. I think, you're probably talking October at the earliest. If I mean, his play would have to be really, really bad for him to
Fair.
get yanked in the first month or so. So I just think you got to give him some runway as he moves over to a new position. Because frankly, I mean, Jackson Carman played left tackle a lot last year too. So Jackson Carman, I mean, it's a little bit of a transition for him as well.
Yeah, and I can't imagine him winning the job and immediately getting benched. I mean, that would mean it was a really close, or like them feeling so confident and then benching him right away. I mean, that just wouldn't do anybody anything, good, because it'd be hard to go back to him at that point. You destroy his confidence, and you're just
You already
messing with
burned
all
more
the
bridges that are already burned.
well, and you're messing with the chemistry. So I think if he wins the job out of camp, he's going to be there for at least 6 weeks. I mean, it makes no sense to just bench a guy unless, he can't block anybody. But I mean, you'd have to know that coming out of camp. So I can't see him getting benched. Andrew said October. I mean, yeah, so 6 weeks into the season, month and a half, same kind of thing where they're just not going to, they're not going to be that rash.
No, I mean that's fair. I didn't mean to say like week 5. That's pretty early. I think it would have to come like really late in the year. And the thing is, this is a big if, like if it comes to that point, like he'd have to be really bad. Like he'd have to basically be, I mean, this is not an insult to Isaiah Prince, but like he'd have to be Isaiah Prince bad. Like Isaiah Prince only played that Super Bowl year because Riley Reef got hurt. So like you'd have to be that bad to get replaced, because like Isaiah Prince, well, he's not even on the team anymore. He's on Denver's practice squad, I'm pretty sure. So like he didn't even make much of a jump. So you'd have to get, I mean, you'd have to be really bad. So and I'm not saying he will get to that point. I'm just saying we really don't know like how his form's gonna look, how his technique's gonna look. I mean, health is not going to be an issue. He'll be ready for training camp. He said that, and he looked like he's going to be ready. Um, but I guess like as far as numbers go, and it's all subjective because with offensive linemen, like every spot on the line is different from left to right, guard to tackle. I mean, the thing with the Bengals is they just have not really had good continuity at right tackle, like since Andrew Whitworth left. Like you look at the list, Cedric Obegi, bust, first round pick. Couple guys that came and went in between, and then you have Riley Reef gets hurt. Isaiah Prince, I just talked about him, and now you have Lyle Collins again. Weird season last year, gets hurt. Jonah Williams. So they've really struggled like that. I think that position by itself, right tackle, they have struggled to do well at that position more than any other position in that span since like what 2016. Since 2016, they have struggled more at right tackle than any position on the roster. They've been able to figure it out everywhere else except that. So what does Joe Williams have to do to make it look like, even if it's just for next season, the Bengals finally figured something out at right tackle?
Well, I don't think there's anything he can do because I don't think he's going to stay. So he's not going to be a long-term option. I mean, if
Just
he
for
has a
now, though, like
successful
just for
year,
2023, I'm saying for next year.
will be good. I mean, have a successful year. I mean, what else is there to do? I
Like,
mean, just block
like,
him.
how many sacks? How many sacks can he allow? How many sacks like can he not allow? Like, because I know
Oh, I mean,
it's
I don't know.
different,
I
but
mean, that's that doesn't if he's not giving like multiple stacks a game, I mean, if he's a functional player, I mean, it's going to be fine. I mean, that you're going to have a weakness on a line. I mean, you can't spend all your money on one spot. They've got a huge amount of money invested in the offensive line. So, I mean, you know, Williams right now is that kind of perceived to be the weakest piece. But I mean, that's and most teams would die for the front five that the Bengals have coming in. So I think he'll be fine. With what he is, I don't. I don't think he's going to be a Pro Bowler, but I don't think he's going to be benchable, and I think that's fine for what they have and invested at the other spots. They brought in Orlando Brown, that's the guy, right? And they spent all that money last year. I mean, this is just I think the line is going to be fine. But Jonah Williams just has to, if he did what he does, if he plays how he played last year, I don't think you'd necessarily complain, considering he's your fifth best lineman.
Okay, no, I think that makes sense. And that's kind of what I was looking at is like, how much do you temper the expectations? Because like you said, they've put a lot of money in this line. So like, do you have to have super lofty hopes? Like, do you kind of temper it down and say like, Jonah Williams needs to be okay? Like, I think that's kind of what I was looking for. And that's sort of what I was thinking. Like, does that kind of make sense to you, Andrew? Like, for people who are like, oh, Jonah Williams has to go rah, rah, rah. Like, do you kind of have to temper those expectations and say, hey, just let him do what he did last year. Like, let him cook and he'll be fine. Like, is that kind of how you look at Jonah Williams at right tackle next year?
Yeah, I mean, I would kind of retweet everything that Mike just said. I mean,
Retweet.
you look at what Jonah did in 22, and I mean, a lot of the year he was hurt. I mean, I think he was kind of battling through some stuff, and I mean, again, putting numbers on it is hard. Kind of putting anything that's quantifiable is hard. I think if you play well enough to where you're not an obvious liability. I mean, you would think that Orlando Brown Jr. is an upgrade. Cordell Volson's going to get better. If you get the same thing from Ted Karras and Alex Kappa, I mean, you're going to be fine on the offensive line. So as long as there's not like a glaring issue, frankly, I would have a hard time kind of saying that Jonah Williams would be the scapegoat. I think he would be if the offensive line starts to struggle and there's not an obvious culprit. I think Jonah will probably be the first one to get blamed. Because on the outside you're more visible. Obviously, fans are not going to be quick to blame their new free agent signee. But I think that as long as there's nothing glaring about Jonah and on the offensive line, then that'll be a pretty successful year for him.
I think we can all agree on that. Man, Jonah Williams, just center of a lot of attention and a lot of attention that is not going anywhere, not even close until training camp. So we'll be talking about him quite a bit once we get closer to the end of July. We are going to continue our countdown and we are going to continue ranking the rest of the guys on our list. So stay tuned for that. We're going to have some more Bengals fan stories, which they've been fun, and we've had some cool Columbus cats. So we're gonna have to see if we can get somebody from outside of Columbus because we got to diversify the mix a little bit. So stay tuned for that. It's gonna be a lot of fun. And again, submit your response if you haven't already, and make sure you sign up for our Strictly Stripes newsletter by going to cleveland.com/newsletter and click on the Strictly Stripes newsletter. It's easy, it's free to sign up, and it's in your inbox every morning. Once again, for myself, Andrew, and Mike, I'm Muhammad Ahmad. We will see you on Thursday.